we're able to connect.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
It's, I'm sorry if there was some confusion on the way leading up to it.
What would have been confusing?
Well, you said we were a little late in getting the link to you, which I know can be frustrating.
Oh, well, yeah, okay. Well, that happens. Don't worry about it. I'm glad we're here.
Catherine is going to be signing on in a second. She didn't forget.
Okay.
Hey, Rabbi Block, good to see you.
Hello. Give me just 1 minute. I want to call up my sheets to share. Good. Oh, wow. People are sitting in the seats in the classroom.
Why are some of us in seats and some of us not?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm going to try it again.
So all there.
All right.
Okay.
That's cool. I've never seen that before.
I hadn't either. I just thought it was fun.
I feel guilty that my head's not there.
Come in and sit down.
So I don't know who the host is, but I don't have sharing power, and I'm going to need to have screen sharing power,
Okay.
which I think means making me a co-host.
Yes.
Yeah.
How to do that.
But
Oh, you know.
let's see.
Here you go.
Share
I
screen
kn-
green.
No, we have to make him a co-host. It's,
I'll sit down and be good.
where's,
I'm a little rusty. I just got to figure out how I did that.
Just click on me. I don't know
Yeah.
how to do it in the classroom.
okay, you know what? I will not be the co-host. I will close myself down as co-host
That doesn't have anything to do with anything.
No.
and then make you the co-host. Okay.
Here, I can do.
Oh,
there we
you
go.
might be able to make me the co-host if you're a co-host.
I think I just did it.
Yes, you are now
you did.
co-host.
You did.
Excellent.
Karen, I don't want to call you Karen, but I don't know how to pronounce your last name.
You're fine. It's Bodney Hallis.
Alice. Okay. All right.
Yeah, like Alice with an H.
All right. Well, thank you, Rabbi Bodney Alice. I'm glad to see you. It's been a long
Good to see you. I know. I think the last time, well, it was probably a convention, but I keep thinking of you down in Texas when I was down in the South.
Right. So the only disadvantage to this way of having everyone sitting in classes room seats, which is interesting, is that instead of being in the boxes, that means I don't have anybody's name.
Okay, let me change that.
There. Yeah. The other was cool, but this is easier to use.
Okay, it's 11:01. Should we give it a couple more minutes?
And I took off my crown for.
Okay, shall we start? And if people join us, that'll be great. Okay. I think you all know me. My name is Rita Deshman Rich. I am one of the members of the Adult Education Committee. And it is my great honor to welcome Rabbi Barry Block, who will be talking to us today about his latest book, the Social Justice Torah Commentary, which he has edited. Rabbi Block serves in the congregation B'nai Israel in Little Rock, Arkansas. He's a native of Houston and a graduate of Amherst College. It was ordained by Hebrew Union College in 1991, member of the CCAR Board of Trustees, currently serving as Vice President of Organizational Relationships. He's edited several books, including the Musar Torah commentary, and which is a finalist for the National Jewish Book Award. He's a regular contributor to the CCAR Journal and serves as a faculty dean at the URJ Henry S. Jacobs Camp. He is a past board chair of Planned Parenthood of South Texas, and he is a proud father of Robert and Daniel. I have that in my notes too. And we are just very, very happy to have him here today. I will ask everyone to mute themselves while Rabbi is talking. And if you have questions, please use the chat room. And then after we can read the questions that you or comments that you have and have some discussion after Rabbi Block talks. So please, I will mute you now, I guess.
Thank you very much, Rita. It's great to be with y'all, and thank you, Rabbi Bodney Halas, for help.
Oops.
You're muted.
Yes, I'm sorry.
And thanks also to Rabbi Sobo. It's great to be with y'all. Rabbi, we want to hear Torah from the Bima, not politics. Every rabbi has heard this request from time to time. And in fact, sometimes rabbis hear it from each other. In other words, one rabbi will say to the other, my people want to hear Torah, they don't want to hear politics. And of course, politics, I would define rather narrowly as supporting or opposing candidates for office. And when we do that, we imperil our tax-exempt status. While there are a lot of clergy and congregations on the extreme right that do this all the time, and their tax-exempt status is fully intact. We in the Reform movement, very much support the Johnson Amendment. We don't support and oppose candidates from the pulpit. That's politics. But when we talk about social justice, when we talk about issue advocacy, when we talk about creating a just society, we are teaching Torah. At its root, Torah establishes a just society, establishes rules, not suggestions, but rules for how a just society is to be established. In fact, intermingles the obligations to establish a just society alongside ritual matters. So Torah in no way treats ritual matters as religious and social justice, organization of societal matters as political, but rather treats all of that as God's will and God's word and as God's commandments. And Torah pays special attention to hearing voices that might otherwise be quiet or silenced. So so the Social Justice Torah commentary is intended, for one thing, as a refutation of the notion of Rabbi, we want to hear Torah, not politics. A refutation of the notion that Torah and social justice are different things. In fact, social justice is a key and central concern of Torah. And the Social Justice Torah commentary is conceived as an antidote to what brings about the complaint, Rabbi, we want to hear Torah, not social justice, and what I want to say about what can bring that about is that we have very central and important principles of Judaism that undergird our social justice activism. For example, we're all created in the image of God. Remember the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Justice, justice shall you pursue. Those are very, very important principles, and yet sometimes we will make social justice arguments very thinly based only on those one-liners, if you will. And so what I asked the authors of the Social Justice Torah commentary to do was to take a Torah portion, to dive deeply into the Torah portion that they were examining, and to build a social justice argument based on their authentic read of the portion itself, and of the way that the portion has been regarded across Jewish history, whether it was an examination of traditional parshanut, in other words, the commentators of old, or of modern midrash, or of academic scholarship of the Bible, to really go deep into the portion. So when I invited authors to write for the Social Justice Torah commentary, with a very small number of exceptions, I invited rabbis who I knew were interested in social justice. I'll confess, I invited rabbis that I knew were interested in social justice, but I did not say to them, I would like for you to write about gun violence. I would like for you to write about mass incarceration. I would like for you to write about racial profiling or bail reform, or whatever it was. Instead, I said, I'd like for you to propose a topic or topics that you might explore if you were writing on Parashat Lech Lecha, or Vayakhel, or Matot, or Shmini, or whatever it might be. Okay, so in fact, some of the authors for the Social Justice Torah commentary have signature issues with which they are well identified, and yet they wrote on something else because the Torah portion that I asked them to write about cried out to them about a different topic. And so to me, that makes the argument even more authentic, because they went to the Parsha first. They went to the Torah portion first and said, what speaks to me out of this portion that I need to share with the world? And how does Torah create a just world here in this portion? So I want to share very briefly from the some of the text in my chapter of the book. Now, I of course wrote the introduction to the book and set the whole frame for the book, but I'm not going there. When I proposed the book to the CCAR Press Council, I submitted a chapter on Parshat Kedoshim, the Holiness Code, and I want to share some of the text from that very briefly, just to give you an idea of what I mean when I say that Torah establishes social justice. So I'm going to share my screen. Oh, so I said, but hold on just a second. Let me bring up this, and then I'm going to share my screen. Sorry. Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to share a text that I suspect y'all are familiar with. You see this in front of you? In fact, Rita, would you like to read Leviticus chapter 19, verses 9 through 11? They're in English. You'll have to unmute.
All right. When you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not reap all the way to the edges of your field, or gather the gleanings of your harvest. You shall not pick your vineyard bare, or gather fallen fruit of your vineyard. You shall leave them for the poor and the stranger. I, the Eternal, am your God. You shall not steal. You shall not deal deceitfully with one another.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that's the end of those 3 verses from Parashat Kedoshim, from the Holiness Code, and I suspect that selection is somewhat familiar to you. Now, what you might notice is that verses 9 and 10 are all about how You're supposed to leave a portion of your field and a portion of your harvest for the poor, right? About how you're not supposed to that ancient Israelites who were virtually all agricultural were not supposed to reap all the way to the corners, but leave the corners for the poor. And also the gleanings, in other words, what would fall during the harvest, they were supposed to leave. And similarly with vineyards, they weren't supposed to pick them bare, but to leave some for the poor and the stranger. But then verse 11 seems to go to a different subject, and one with which we're familiar from the Ten Commandments and elsewhere, lo tignovu, you shall not steal. So one of the principles of Torah interpretation is that when you have two passages adjacent to one another that seem not to be related, then your job, our job, as those who interpret Torah, is to figure out how they're related. So a 13th century commentator, Rabbi Jacob ben Asher, notes that the commandment to leave the corner of the field is immediately followed by the words lo tignovu, you shall not steal. Rabbi Jacob suggests that the proximity of the two seemingly unrelated passages is to warn the owner not to steal from what belongs to the poor. So I'm going to take that down real quick and ask you, what does it mean to say that the reason that this is there is to warn the field's owner not to steal from what belongs to the poor? How does this passage establish the society? And please feel welcome to unmute yourself to answer.
Okay, well, I will jump in with the obvious of that God has already declared that the leavings of the fields are there for, the corners of the fields are there for the poor people. If we are cheating, if we take it, we are cheating them out of it. We need to be supporting all of society. Okay.
So so yes, and you're almost there. So you said that God said that those corners of the fields were there for the poor people. What actually does God say? So, but if the owner of the field would be stealing, if they went and took from the corner of their own field, what really is God saying about the corner of the field?
Well, first of all, the corner of the fields is not the farmer, but I'd like to broaden it out to say that when the farmer is planting food, etc., it's not just for the farmer, it's for the community.
Correct. So but I want to stick with the first point, if you don't mind, because
Sure.
of the way that Americans tend to view land that we own, that it's mine to do with as I wish, right? And what is the text saying about the corner of the field and the question of ownership?
It belongs
not
to the poor.
Yes, that the produce that grows in the corner of those fields and the produce that falls in the course of harvesting actually is owned by the poor. Okay, that is their property. So we're going to go back to the text here. In other words, the corner of the field is already the property of the field, not the landowner. Okay, you said that. The 16th century rabbi, Moses Alsish, goes even further. You shouldn't think that you are giving to the poor person from your own property, or that I have despised the poor by not giving bread to them as I have given to you. So in other words, this is not a prosperity gospel. Judaism doesn't have a prosperity gospel. For the poor are also my children, just as you are, but their portion is in your produce. Okay, so God establishes a few matters that we may say are not religious matters, And what are the matters that God establishes here? In other words, somebody might say, Rabbi, that's not Torah. That's not so. That's politics. But I mean, obviously, I've shown it to you from the Torah. But what are the points that a person might say that's not Torah? Or maybe a better question is, how does, however imperfectly, how does American society put the same principle into motion? Most of us aren't farmers, and even those who are not required to leave the corner of their fields. So yes.
Yeah.
Marcia?
So it's charity.
Okay, so it's charity. So that's a reasonable way to look at it. And I think that that's the way that most Americans look at it. So charity, by definition, is optional, right?
It's tzedakah.
Well, okay. So true enough that tzedakah is not optional in Judaism, right? But I want to suggest to you that American law, that Congress has passed a law that essentially says the corner of your field belongs to, not to you.
Income tax.
Correct. Correct. That and there is a significant group of religious Americans who argue that lower taxes is a religious obligation. I don't understand that argument. I don't even know where it comes from, but the idea that we have an obligation to, and I recognize that our taxes go for a whole lot of other things besides providing for the poor, right? But the notion that we have an obligation, a legal obligation, to leave a portion of what we have for the poor, in other words, to quote unquote pay taxes to provide for the poor, is directly from the Torah, is directly from Judaism. Okay, so that's sort of a foundational piece that I offer up as to say that Torah in and of itself establishes social justice. Does anybody have any questions about what I shared from Parashat Kedoshim? Because I'm about to go to this week's Torah portion and dive into something much more specific. Anybody want to say anything about Kedoshim or the general? Okay, all right. So this week's Torah portion, you might say to yourself, what in the world would Parashat Tzav? So yesterday we read Parashat Vayikra, the first portion in the book of Leviticus, which means that now, as of yesterday afternoon, we're on to the next Parsha. We're on to Parashat Tzav. What would this portion that is a lot of very detailed prescriptions about how sacrifices are to be offered in the ancient temple, what in the world could that have to do with social justice in our society? Okay, so I'm going to share with you what the contributor, and I want to tell you something. Whenever I'm invited to do something like this, I prepare a source sheet based on whatever Parsha is during the week that I'm presenting. Okay, so and I say that to you because I could do this on any week. Okay, that no matter how abstruse or unrelated to social justice the Parsha seems to be, somebody's made a very compelling argument. Okay, so I'm going to show you today's and see what you think. I think it's compelling. So here's where Rabbi Ruti Regan starts. Fran, would you like to read for us Leviticus chapter 6, verse 8?
A handful of choice flour and oil of the meal offering shall be taken from it, with all the frankincense that is on the meal offering. And this token portion shall be tuned and smoked on the altar as pleasing odor to Adonai.
Thank you. All right. So this does not seem to be about establishing a just society. This seems to be very much a ritual matter. You got to take this choice flour and add the good smelling stuff for it and turn a portion to it of it into fire on the altar as a pleasing odor to Adonai. All right. So Marcia, I wonder if you would read what Ibn Ezra has to say about this section. You'll just need to unmute.
Thank you. Ibn Ezra. And when anyone bringeth fine flour, the meaning of solet, fine flour, is pure wheat flour. It is the same as that which is called samid in Arabic. Look, it is not fitting that a meal offering brought to the Most High come from anything than which nothing better exists.
Okay. So if you're so first of all, you may wonder, why does he tell you what it's equivalent to in Arabic? It's because Ibn Ezra is writing in an Arabic speaking country. He's speaking to his readers who would know Arabic, and he says that's what it is. And he says, look, if you're making an offering to God, you'd really need to give what is the very best. Okay? So again, this all seems to be about a ritual matter. All right. So now, Corey or Sharon, I wonder if one of you would read what Rabbi Regan has to say in applying that principle. You'll just need to unmute yourself.
Do I start with doing the right and necessary
Yes.
thing? Okay.
Yes.
Doing the right and necessary thing can be expensive. Those who brought grain offerings were required to use the highest quality flour, investing a valuable resource into sustaining the sanctuary. Similarly, failing to bring our best to ensure equal access is an affront to the one we seek to serve. In the times of the ancient sacrifices and today, desire to proclaim our values is not enough. We have to put our money where our mouth is. On both an individual and communal level, budgetary priorities embody our values. Equality is only possible when communities are willing to devote resources to accessibility. In order to build equality into our most sacred spaces, we have to be willing to pay for it.
Okay. So what's the point that Rabbi Regan's making here? She's actually not making a point about American governmental policy right here, although you could broaden it out to be that. She's making a point about establishing justice within our synagogues and other Jewish spaces, right? So what is the point that she's making here?
If your budget doesn't reflect your ethical priorities, something is out of line.
That's right. Good. And okay, so that's exactly right. And how does she tie it back to the Torah?
Well, she ties it back to the Torah that you have to that the sacrifice, the offering that you're giving has to be of the finest kind. I can't see that up on the screen.
Yes, correct. Right. Exactly. So just like you had to give the very finest flour, when we are in our sanctuaries, we have to be willing to spend to do the most in order to achieve our values, right? And okay, so Catherine, I wonder if you would unmute and read for us this next little quote here the Torah teaches from Rabbi Regan.
Yeah. Thank you. Rabbi Ruth Reagan.
No,
sacred-
so that's
Yep.
that's actually just the telling
Oh,
you.
okay.
Right.
Sorry.
The Torah teaches.
The Torah teaches us that we are all created in God's image, and yet our communities do not always treat everyone equally. All too often, Jews with disabilities are excluded from both Jewish and secular spaces or treated unequally within them.
Okay, I'm going to stop the share for just a minute because I want to talk about that. So now I've never been to your synagogue. Okay. But I'm going to make an assumption that there is no sign on the door that says disabled people not welcome here, right?
Right.
Okay, all right.
Right.
I'm pretty sure there's no sign on the door that tells disabled people to stay away. Okay. But how, and in fact, I've been to a lot of synagogues, although I haven't been to yours. I've never seen such a sign. But how might Rabbi Regan, as a disabled person, by the way, she can walk, talk, and hear and see just fine. But how might her disability is more of a, shall we say, hidden one, but how might a disabled person look at a synagogue and say, I'm not welcome here?
Well, we actually solved that with the building of our new temple 27 years ago. And you can arrive on the bima without taking any steps.
But
Okay.
I'm going to say, our family joined Temple Israel more than 30 years ago because we had belonged to a different synagogue which did not welcome our son who was disabled. When we considered joining, I contacted Temple Israel and said, do you have a place in the religious school for my son? And
so tell us what, do you mind elaborating a little bit about that? About what was not, how your son wasn't welcomed, or what?
Well, they said they didn't want him in the religious school because he was, okay, he is brain injured. He has some cognitive and some definitely emotional issues. Okay. And so he's not an easy kid. He's not an easy adult now, but he was not an easy kid then. And I have to say, when we came to Temple Israel, the director of the religious school at that time, Shirley Schatz, whom I think we all love, and we sincerely miss, just arranged to make sure that Richard was welcomed and a part of the religious school. And there were adaptations had to be made, and it worked out okay.
So at your prior synagogue, with no sign on the door that said disabled people aren't welcome here, your son was not welcome there. Very
clearly, yeah.
Okay. Anybody else about other ways in which, yes,
Yeah.
Catherine.
When I first joined Temple, I realized that the doors to enter Temple are very, very heavy. Now I say there is a silent sign, and I don't think Temple did that with any malfeasance, therefore, but eventually what happened was the doors became electric so that you could push a button and easily enter. They also have the ramp that goes up to the door, making it much easier for people who use walkers or who have wheelchairs to approach the door. And then on the left side is the button that says come in. And to me, that's a silent welcome to Temple.
So I would say it's not even all that silent. That's a really explicit sign without the words that saying disabled people are welcome here. That's a pretty explicit sign saying disabled people are welcome here, right?
Right.
Now you said, Fran, that 27 years ago, you built a new temple with a high awareness of disability access. I'm hearing physical disability access, and I'm hearing from Rita access for people with intellectual and emotional disabilities in religious school. Are there any other access issues? Yes.
Let me
Mark.
just say that a lot of the reason why our Bima is accessible, our entire temple is on one level, temple building is on one level, and it's terrazzo floors with very little carpeting throughout. Was that we had a member with a child in a wheelchair. And in our old building, built in the 50s, there were several steps to the Bima. And from all the different directions. And so part of that is that we learned from our congregation. So
okay. So you actually had people, and you had to listen to them. That's
right.
Great.
So then let's talk about hearing.
Oh yes, let's talk about hearing. Hearing's the big one.
So we had, I don't know if you knew of Dr. Eric Friedland, who was the world's leading authority in non-Orthodox Jewish liturgy. He died about several years ago.
Okay.
Anyhow, at that time, we had some assistive hearing devices, which did or did not work. But now in the land of Zoom, and with almost 2 years experience of doing Friday night services on Zoom, the rabbis have a huge library of PowerPoint slides with prayers. And I have to say, when I first went to the biennial and I saw this, visual kind of thing, I found it off-putting, but I've come to learn that I don't count in thinking that it's off-putting.
Wait, what part is off-putting?
When seeing the big screen with the prayers, to me at the beginning was off-putting.
Okay.
But it doesn't matter that it was off-putting to me if it meant that there were other people who could then
yes. Sorry, I really wanted to be sure I got the point. That's the point. Yes, that it's terribly important that people who are hearing impaired or visually impaired or whatever it is, that they can that they can access the congregation. Correct. That they can participate fully in worship. Right? Anything else that's an accessibility issue? Yes, Marcia.
We have some large print prayer books.
Yes. We also have some things from the Jewish Braille Institute. We do have one member who was blind, who we did order materials from for the Jewish Braille Institute.
So when do you order materials from the Jewish Braille Institute? I don't mean when do you, Temple Israel, but when does a congregation order materials from the Jewish Braille Institute?
When there's a need, when somebody in the congregation has that need.
Anybody have a different thought?
No, you honestly need it before you have the need. Because if you don't have it before you have the need, then the person who comes in is not going to feel welcome.
Right. Correct.
But sometimes you don't know that the need is there. And I think letting people know that we are prepared to fill that need is very important.
So you would need to have signage up that says, and signage in all of your publicity, let's say, that says, if there's a need that isn't being met, please let us know. And when material becomes available from the Jewish Braille Institute, let's say that would make, there's a story, by the way, that I have about Mishkan Tefillah. When Mishkan Tefillah was initially published, so So actually, this isn't initial because you'll remember the great big fat one that has everything in it, or maybe that's what's in your sanctuary. But here's just the sanctuary version, right? And they printed a larger one, okay? But they just printed a larger one. By the way, I like it. I think it's good as a pulpit edition. But I'm not visually impaired. Because I'm at the pulpit, I'm further from the book if I don't want to hold it in my hand up here. So I like having a bit bigger print, but only later when Rabbi Hara Person took over at CCR Press, several years after Mishkan Tefillah came out, did they say, this is not approved. I mean, this is not what low vision people really need. They need something much bigger. And in order to be much bigger and useful, it needs to be bound differently, because otherwise it'd be really heavy, right? So it's in several volumes, and it's loose leaf. I mean, maybe it's not exactly loose leaf, but anyway, I've seen our members using it. We have it. I've seen our members using it. And so the time you need that is from the time that it's available, because you want to be sure that it's there when the first person comes in who needs it. So look, we can all always do better. And I notice, and really, please don't take this as a criticism, because I'm not sure we do any better from our congregation, that we don't have closed captioning on this Zoom. And by the way, automatic closed captioning is one thing, and it's only so, but at least it's something. To get like live closed captioning, that's really expensive. And so, I mean, there's always more that you can do. And since you built your temple 27 years ago, I wonder, and I realize this is not a disability issue, but I wonder if you have an all gender restroom. And because 27 years ago, no one would have thought of that. And so, there are accessibility issues that are out there that you wouldn't have thought of 27 years ago. And I'm sure and by the way, nobody's perfect. But and I have yet to see the perfect synagogue. But I'm really impressed by what you're reporting about yours. Well, and Rabbi Badni Halas says we do have a family restroom in the religious school hallway, which is awesome. Very good. We're really going to have to start publicizing the clergy restroom, as the all gender restroom, and make it clear that people can come down here and use it. Or else we're going to have to spend a tremendous amount of money to build a new restroom. All right, so there's this very famous story. Harry, would you like to read? You just need to unmute.
Yeah, speaking of consideration for disabilities, no.
No, okay, that's fine. All right, very good. Corey, I think it was Sharon read before. Would you like to read?
I'm sorry too. I have a vision problem.
Okay, no worries. And I wonder if I can make this bigger, but Sharon, as long as you're unmuted, why don't you read for us from Shabbat 31a?
I have to move really close because it's really small.
I'm so sorry. On my screen it's big, but I have a big screen here.
Okay, I think I can read it. Okay. There was another incident involving one Gentile who came before Shammai and said to Shammai, "Convert me on condition, that you teach me the entire Torah while I am standing on one foot." Shammai pushed him away with the builder's cubit in his hand. This was common measuring stick, and Shammai was a builder by trade. The same Gentile came before Hillel. He converted him and said to him, "That which is hateful to you, do not do to another. That is the entire Torah, and the rest is its interpretation. Go study."
Okay, so I wonder why you think Why would Rabbi Regan have brought up this very famous, you know, almost cliche, because we all know it so well, story in this context? Any thoughts about why she would have brought this up in this context? So anybody here ever been excluded from anything because you were a Jew? Or felt like you might have been excluded from something because maybe the reason you were excluded was because you were a Jew? Or anybody ever know that their parents were excluded from something because they were a Jew? And I know that not everybody here's parents were Jewish, but I'm seeing some nods. Okay. And we certainly know that this is a reality of our history, right? And so we, you know, and so maybe it's a particular imperative to those of us who've been excluded. But she goes actually a different direction, Rabbi Regan does. And she says, in other words, doing right by others is easier said than done. So in other words, Hillel says what is hateful to you, don't do to somebody else. That's the whole Torah. Okay. But the rest is interpretation, go study it. Or the rest is, we usually translate it commentary, go and learn it. It's the same word in Hebrew. Perusheha, Perusha, sorry. So it's interpretation, or it's commentary, go and study it. So if we approach all Torah as an opportunity to go and learn how to do the right thing, we can better live up to our values. So Torah, it's only the beginning to say we got to go and learn more. So she says, in addition to money, because remember, now we're back to the matter of bringing the really fine flour. You got to spend some money to do something do the right thing. In addition to money, there is a spiritual price we need to pay as we strive toward equality. If disability equality is a mitzvah, then treating people with disabilities unequally within our communities is a sin for which we must do tshuva. We need to be prepared to face the fact that our communities have long made choices that have hurt Jewish people with disabilities very badly. When we exclude people, we don't have to see the consequences. When access to Jewish spaces is so rare that people feel the need to smile and express gratitude for anything at all, we can tell ourselves that they are always happy. When people with disabilities are so marginalized within our community, they're afraid to speak up, we can ignore their pain. As we move toward greater equality, we are going to have to feel the weight of this pain and trauma. We have to accept the vulnerability that comes along with tshuva. We've done wrong and we need to do better. So a congregation that I used to serve was all handicap accessible. Every single place in the temple could be reached by a wheelchair. However, the walk to get there was really long. The walk to get from the door to the sanctuary was really long, right? Mm-hmm. So you can have a situation where, and by the way, a lot of people who can't walk stairs, but by the way, there's a lot more people who can't walk long distances than can't walk two or three stairs. And a lot of people who can't walk long distances do not want to get in a wheelchair to go that distance, right? Maybe in the airport, because that's a big thing and a lot of people get in the wheelchair to the airport, right? Am I right about this? That a lot of people don't want to get in a wheelchair. So, absolutely. So there are a lot of things that people may not complain about that actually exclude them. And so this is where, remember, this whole portion is about details of the sacrifices. So then Rabbi Regan quotes another part of the Parsha, which says that the meal offering shall not be baked with leaven, I have given it as their portion from my offerings by fire. It is most holy, like the sin offering and the guilt offering. So the meal offering that's described in Parshat Tzav is as holy as the sin offering. And she says, grappling with sin and guilt has always been part of the sacred work that sustains our communities. In the ancient world, this sometimes involved bringing sin offerings to the sanctuary. In Parshat Tzav, the sanctity of guilt offerings is taken for granted and used to illustrate the holiness of the grain offering, right? See, this is like sin and guilt offering. The sin offering and the guilt offering, you already know that those are holy. You got to take this one seriously too. But taken for granted that the sin and guilt offerings are important. Even though the sins themselves were shameful, the sin offerings were both as sacred and as routine as other type of offerings. The priest offered them on a regular basis and even ate of them. Not only is the work of tshuva possible, it sustains us. So continuing to do better is something that has to go on every day and something that sustains us. So it's fantastic to celebrate the building that you built handicap accessible 27 years ago, and it's important to keep doing the work. So Rabbi Badni Halas, I wonder if you would read for us from it's actually not from Parshat Tzav, but Rabbi Regan quotes something that comes in the very next portion to make a point here in Leviticus 10.
Now Aaron's sons, Nadav and Abihu, each took his fire pan, put fire in it, and laid incense on it. And they offered before Adonai alien fire, which had not been enjoined upon them. And fire came forth from Adonai and consumed them. Thus they died at the instance of Adonai.
She writes, the dedication of the sanctuary should have been a time of communal celebration, but instead the community is forced to bear the trauma of the very public deaths of two sacred leaders. When we are in a position of power, we must attend to consequential details, even when they seem small. When we have the power to provide or deny access, it is of the utmost importance that we listen to people with disabilities about the details that matter to them. Proper attention to detail can be the difference between life and death. In specific, she's referring to the pitch of ramps, right? And I take it, and let me tell you, if your people are using the ramps, probably the pitch of them is good, is fine. But one thing we know is that not all ramps, especially that were built a number of years ago, are safe, right? That ramps that sometimes, by the way, when you're building a building or remodeling a synagogue or whatever it is, that you come across that it's a big pain to make everything ADA compliant. But she points out that those details could be the difference between life and death. And so what Rabbi Regan does, she goes into this portion which never mentions disabled people. Okay, I want to emphasize this, that Parshat Tzav never specifically mentions disabled people. It does mention being very careful about how you enact the very specific and detailed obligations about the offerings in the sanctuary, and about making sure that you bring the best, even though it costs more. And out of that, she draws this argument. Now, you could have drawn a different argument, by the way, right? But she draws this argument about building, about assuring that our sacred spaces in detail meet the needs of everybody who needs to be there. Everybody we hope will be there, which is everybody wants to be there. So I'm at the end of my formal presentation, and I'm eager to take a few minutes for questions or comments that you have about this process of the Social Justice Torah commentary, or about this portion. Please, Rita.
Actually, when you were talking initially about the corners of the field and the fact that the growth there does not belong to the owner of the property, it struck a chord with me simply because right now I'm in the middle of reading a book called Braiding Sweetgrass, which is by a Native American author who is a botanist, and she talks about the connection we have with the earth and that you don't take more because it belongs to the earth. That we must appreciate, we appreciate what is there, and that we take what is offered, but we don't take all. And I thought that that is a real connection there too.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for that. And to recognize that the same thing can be said in different ways in different traditions. It is an important part of understanding different cultures and different faiths.
It's
Yes.
interesting because at Torah study yesterday, we were so thrilled to begin Leviticus. And I think that laugh was from someone else who was there yesterday. And what we actually ended up doing is deciding to look at Leviticus through the paradigm of communication. In all aspects, and it occurs to me that with your social action commentary, what you did is used the paradigm of social action, and this is why the Torah has lasted as long as it has, because there are so many paradigms and prisms through which you can look at it.
Right. And by the way, the piece on Parshat Vayikra that you studied yesterday in the Social Justice Torah commentary is written by Rabbi Mary Zamor, who is the executive director of the Women's Rabbinic Network, and she writes about harassment-free Jewish spaces, and she talks about how Parshat Vayikra sets up particular processes for the priests to repent of their sins, and recognizes that priests can be sinful, and that's something that that all of us in I think I was going to say in modern society, but I don't think it's tied to any particular age, have a real problem with recognizing that our religious leaders could be wrongdoers. And by the way, that could be religious leaders who are valuable volunteers, lay leaders of synagogues, as not just rabbis, and of course in other faiths as well. She calls such a person the productive perpetrator, whose wrongdoing is allowed to persist because they are productive. That's the argument that she makes, and that's there's a whole lot of the Social Justice Torah commentary, because it was all written in 2020. It was published in November of 21. A whole lot of it is racial justice, which is terribly important. I joke that it's not exactly joke, but that Rabbi Zamor talked on the topic that became, right in front of us in Reform Judaism in 2021. Although, of course, it's been on our radar screen for some time, and it's been very central to Rabbi Zamor's work for a long time before 2020. Marcia, do you want to say something?
I just wanted to say, you can extrapolate from need or disability to the wider world and everything that is happening in the world in terms of war and especially the Ukraine situation. It's a leap.
That we have to be willing to pay.
Yes.
Yes, I actually, my sermon on Friday night was on sacrifice, and how I just put in the chat, that's just a link to buy the Social Justice Torah commentary. But you know, you have to be willing to give up something to get something, and to draw closer to one another. And previous generation of Americans, particularly the greatest generation, you know, they knew that they had to sacrifice in order to win World War II, and sacrifice lives on the battlefield, to sacrifice their access to sugar and gasoline and a lot of other things, you know, on the home front, and pay more for things, and all of that. Americans don't like sacrifice anymore.
No, you're right.
If we're going to win this this fight for freedom that looks an awful lot like when Hitler took over the Sudetenland in Czechoslovakia, and because Putin's not going to stop if he's if he permitted easily to walk over Ukraine. So if we want to stop that, we're going to have to sacrifice. So I think you're right. Thank you so much for inviting me and for having me here. I got to go read the Megillah. I really, really appreciate this time with you, Rita. Thank you for conceptualizing this session. Rabbi Badni Halas, thank you for being with us, and please thank Rabbi Sobo on our behalf for extending the invitation along with Rita.
Well, thank you so much. This has been a really worthwhile, interesting morning, and I think we could keep talking about this for hours if we really wanted to. If we were able to, I think we wanted.
We could turn it. And I have one piece of advice: if you buy the Social Justice Torah commentary, which I saw that Rita, some of you have, great, is to read the introduction and then go to whatever is this week's parsha. You don't need to read it from the cover to the cover.
Yeah.
Rita, we can talk for hours.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what, Fran?
I said, we're Jews. We can talk for hours.
Oh, yes.
For sure.
Well, Yasher Koach on this book. I think it's going to be such a tremendous resource. It already is to our congregations. Sincerely, thank you for putting it out and making it available for us, and for spending the time to help make it accessible.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me this morning. Y'all have a great day.
Thank you, Rabbi Block.
Thank
Be
you.
safe and healthy. Bye-bye.
Rabbi, I sent you an email
Okay.
for the
Sorry for what?
website, adding accessibility specifically to the website.
Okay, you know the website is totally being redone right now, right?
I know, that's why I sent it to Courtney so that she could add it to the website.
Got it.
Got it.
Great. I haven't seen it lately, so I don't know. It's
Oh, you're going to be delighted. It's
Yeah.
really shaped nicely.
good. I saw it at the beginning. I'm looking forward to seeing it now.
Yeah. And by the way, the link to this was not in the calendar on the homepage of the website. I had to go back to tidbits.
Oh, okay.
So
I will let Courtney know.
it's okay. Just got to think about all these things.
Yeah, normally I'm more on top of that, but I haven't been here, so I apologize.
But you haven't been here. None of this is a complaint. It's just an observation so that we can improve.
Well, I certainly appreciate it.
No, I got it from the website.
Where?
Mhm.
From the calendar? Yeah.
Yep.
Then user error, or as someone in one of my clients said, SIOP, stupid idiot operating procedure.
Oh. That's one that's going to lift someone up.
Oh yeah, exactly. And actually the supervisor looked at the technician who was writing this into logs that are open for CMS surveying and said, what does this mean? And he was told it. He said, yeah, no, you're not going to use that anymore.
That's funny. I like it.
Have a great day, everybody.
You too. Thank you guys for putting this together.
Yeah, Rita, great job.
Wonderful.